Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. Takes a lot of effort for me to get up nowadays. I'm Ray Moss, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, friends. Sterling, Judy. John, you were here when this thing started, and we want to thank you folks who put it together for the first time. I came here 31 years ago. You just had the first one. I came to the second one, uptown Myrtle Beach at the Holiday Inn, and it was 19 degrees then, and it was about 22 when I got down here the other day. So things do stay the same sometimes at Myrtle Beach. I'm surprised. I got up, stood down up here, and the first time I saw it, was this thing up here the other night y'all talked? I'm gonna turn around and let y'all look at it. Sterling said he put it up here just because I was a preacher. Reminds me of a story I heard about an old preacher friend of mine who, or he tells it, he said it was true. He said that when he'd go to a new congregation, he would always made it a practice to be through with his sermon by 10 minutes till 12 so that they could get the money and get out of there and get down to the Hardee's or Burger King, wherever they're going to eat dinner together. Every time he preached, it was the same thing. He stopped at 5-10 minutes till. And one day, one of the old brothers wanted to know how he did it. Well, he said it's a simple thing. He said, you know, when I start speaking, I put a cough drop in my mouth. And when the cough drop's gone, I just stop. And one morning, a few weeks after that, he went to 12 o'clock. 10 after 12. 12:50, people begin to get up and leave. So after the service, the same old boy came up to him and said, well, Reverend, what happened this morning? He said, you know, I put a button in my mouth by mistake. I like this conference. This is a wonderful retreat. And the speakers this week, they've inspired me. The language of the heart, I've cried and I've laughed with you, and I thank you. I thank you for doing that. And the thing that impresses me about gratitude is that the speakers come and stay in the meetings. You know, sometimes I go places and speakers just kind of get lost, but thank you folks for being here. Thank you for being here this morning on Sunday morning. In Kannapolis, North Carolina, where I was born and where I now live, used to be the largest textile cotton mill town in the world. And they took great pride in that, and I didn't like it. Because my mom and daddy and grandpa and grandma, all of them lived in that little old, they lived in that town, and they all lived in a mill house. Now, you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a little bitty shack. Yeah, you do? Some of you do. Well, I lived in one of those 3 rooms, no bath, had an outside toilet. And my mom and daddy and my sister, we lived in that little 3-room house, and I grew up there and had a good time most of the time. But the thing that bothered me about where I grew up was the fact that they called people lint heads. And cotton mill workers. And I swore when I was just a tiny fella that if God ever helped me get out of that place, I'd be gone. My dad was an alcoholic, and he got in this program in the last 6 years of his life. But let me tell you a little bit about Joe, because Joe taught me a lot of things. Probably the most important thing Joe taught me was how to drink. And he did it this way. In our 3-room house, little kitchen, Mama said, Joe, you can't drink in this house. And Mama hated alcohol like with a passion, almost as much as my wife hated it. And now Joe being an alcoholic, he needed to drink. And when he took a drink, he was a periodic drunk. He might take a drink and stay drunk for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he might not drink again for 3 or 4 months. So when Joe was get restless, irritable, and discontent, Mama says he's mean as hell. Just be careful. Don't get around Daddy. Well, Joe couldn't drink in the house proper. Now, mind you, we're talking about 3 little rooms. He couldn't drink in the house proper. But we had a little pantry off by the kitchen where Mama kept her meal and flours and all the stuff she put together, put good food together. And back in the corner, on the right-hand side, sat a bag. And in that bag was a jar, fruit jar, about a quart. And in that fruit jar was some white lightning, and he sat there all the time. That was Daddy's lounge, his bar. And when he got restless, irritable, discontent, he needed to take a drink. He'd go in that little pantry. He'd shut the door. I'd hear him. You could hear the bag rustling. You could even hear the lid coming off, shh, shh, you know. And then Joe would take a drink. And he sang a little song, went like this. God almighty, that's good. And about three drinks, after about 3 drinks, he'd leave the door open. And I watched him. And he'd come out of that place after the 3rd drink, and Joe was a meek and mild little man. Mama was a strong person in our family, and she ran that house like a queen. But when Dad had 3 drinks, by God, he took over. He became the man of the house. He wanted to dance. He wanted to make love. And Mama didn't like what he said, and they'd get into an argument, and first thing you know, Joe's gone. He might be gone 2 weeks. And in this little man's mind, I never worried about where Joe went. The thing that stuck in my mind was, what in the name of God's in that bottle, that jar, that made Joe act like he did, like I wanted to act, you know. One day when Joe was gone, Mamie was gone, I went in that little pantry and shut the door. Wasn't a soul home but me. I shut the door, and I picked up the bag and stripped it down and screwed it off and took me a drink. And I can remember it as if it were yesterday or today, what that drink did for this little boy, maybe 11 years old. Nobody there but me. But you know, after a little while, I began to think, it ain't bad living in Kannapolis. It ain't bad being a lint head. Joe ain't a bad guy. Mamie's okay. But everything was all right. So I learned that day that there was something there that I was going to have, if I could, forever. And it marked my life. Later, when Joe got in the program of recovery, he and I used to talk a lot together. It's amazing what can happen. You know, the truth comes out when you get sober. And we sit on a bench in the park and talk together. And I said to him one day, Dad, you think that you were drinking when I was conceived? He said, I'm certain I was. Drinking all the time. I tell you that because alcohol has been a part of my life ever since conception until today. I wouldn't be here today if I weren't an alcoholic. I wouldn't have been here today if I hadn't taken that first drink. Well, needless to say, alcohol marked my life in that little pantry, and I moved out into life, and alcohol moved with me, and I got in a lot of trouble. When I was 16 years old, down in the principal's office, one more time, he said to me, "Ray, you know, in the state of North Carolina, you can quit school when you're 16. I didn't know that, so I didn't go back anymore. I went to work where I said I never would, and that was in the cotton mill. And I worked there for the rest, for about several more years. One night, on Saturday night, so you know what I was doing, I was drinking to start with, 17 years old, riding around town round and around in a circle, looking for a girl. I'm riding with a guy, and he said, "There's two girls, I know one of them." He pulled over, stopped the car, and I jumped out, and he said, "Y'all want to ride with us?" Well, you know, they were looking for boys, so they automatically jumped in. And Betty got in the back seat. Here she is right here on the front. She's been riding with me. She's been riding with me for 65 years now. What a trip it's been. We got married when we were 19 years old, just kids, just turned 19. We were going to get us a little house and raise us some children. Now, Betty told me, I think the first day I saw her, which was the next day, Sunday, I was over at her house, that she didn't like people that drank. And I just said, well, you know, I won't drink anymore. And I didn't when I was around her, but, you know, when I leave her house, alcohol was always part of my life. Something happened to me once when I was 22 years old. I quit going to church, quit having anything to do with God a long time before that. My dad was drafted into the Second World War, and it seemed to me like all the problems that existed in our house were created by his drinking. So while he was gone for 2 years, I prayed for him every day. The God that I understood as a little boy, I prayed for him. I prayed that he'd get killed. You see, if he didn't come back, the house might be settled down some. That was a terrible prayer, but that's honesty. Well, he didn't die. He came back, and the same old stuff happened over and over again. So my relationship with God ceased and ended when Dad didn't get killed. God that didn't answer prayers was not going to be a part of my life. So there was no God in my life. But when I was 22 years old, I don't have any idea. I couldn't tell you. There's no way for me to search it out, what happened. But God got me from the rear end, slipped up on me. First thing you know, I was going to church. I had a conversion experience. In Baptist language, I'm a Methodist, but in Baptist language, I was saved. And my whole life changed. I quit drinking. I quit smoking. I quit gambling. I almost quit looking at women. And not long after that, a couple of years, I felt that God wanted me to become a preacher. I had what we call a call to preach. Now, I thought God meant for me to take my Bible up on the square in Kannapolis, and I've seen some people do that and preach up there, but I talked to my minister about it, and he said, "No, I think God wants you to go to school." I'd quit school at 16. I was 22, 23 years old at that time. And going back to school, you know, I had to go back to high school, and I was 25 years old. And then on to college and on to seminary. 13 years, no drinking. No drinking at all. My life was clean. Betty and I were good. I was a good minister, and she was a good minister's wife, and we did good things together. And about the first year out of seminary at Duke University, I was appointed to a church in High Point, North Carolina, and then later to move to Greensboro, North Carolina as the director of an Greensboro inner city ministry to to work with the homeless, the helpless, the down and out, the drunks, and the addicts, and the unwed mothers, and those kind of people that were God's people out in the wilderness where nobody wanted to go. And it was a different kind of ministry. I didn't have a pulpit anymore. I was out in the field working with people and meeting with a lot of different groups in that city, trying to raise funds and money to support that ministry. And one night I'm meeting with a group of attorneys. Now, I don't know if there's anybody here, and I don't mean to say anything about them, but they were drinking. And one of them said to me, "Ray, you drank?" And I said, "Well, it's been a long time. Now, this has been 13 years, no drinking." And I took a drink that night, and the drink took me. It wasn't long that I was out there again drinking. And one night, Betty's mouth was worse than Mamie's. She was just like this, you know. She gave me a fit about taking the drink. And I said something that I didn't mean, but it seemed to me that I needed to say it. I said, "Betty, I don't love you anymore." Now, see, it wasn't that I didn't love her. I did love her, but I didn't love what she was causing me to do, and that was to alter my life and not drink. Now, you don't tell somebody you don't love them and not have problems, you know that. So that meant that we were always having difficulties. So one night, I'm working later on down in a few years later, I'm working for the state of North Carolina in the chaplaincy department. And all the guys that worked for me and all the people that I worked for back in the 70s, everybody had a divorce, seemed to me like. And Betty and I weren't getting along too well together, so I asked her one day if she got up enough nerve to go home and ask her if she'd give me a divorce. I thought she'd have a hard time with it. But it didn't take her but a minute to say sure. And, so I left my family, beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children, to drink by God like I wanted to drink. Let me tell you how I drank. All by myself. I got me an apartment. It was a condo. I need to describe that thing for you. I'm going out looking for me a swinging place. Listen, I got married when I was 19. I've been a preacher all my life. I'd never done a bit of swinging. So I found me an apartment, a condo in a swinging singles complex. Everybody there was single. That was what they prided themselves. If you got married, you had to leave. All the people there were single. And so I didn't have a church anymore. And so I went to the liquor store, and I bought me a buggy full of liquor, all kind. I bought it by the colors. I didn't know anything different. See, I drank White Lightning, and I never drank anything but that. And I just picked up by the colors, and I brought it home, and I had gone down to a friend of mine who rented a furniture store, and I bought me a bar. Methodist parsonages don't have bars in them, so I wanted a bar. I'm going to drink like a gentleman, and it was a nice bar. It was not real mahogany, but it was nice. And it had 2 stools. And I took all that liquor and I put it in there, and let me tell you how I drank. I didn't know this till I got sober. Didn't recognize it. Up about 12 steps to the 2nd floor of that condo. You had to walk up 12 steps and walk through the bedroom. The mattress on the floor where I was going to do all the swinging. Back to the little closet. Open the door. Bag sitting in the right-hand corner. I'm carrying a glass in my hand, and I pour it out, fill it up, go back downstairs and drink that glass full. Back up the steps, into that little closet, pour me out a drink, back and forth. I don't think I ever took a drink from the bar. Never had a soul in there to drink with me. No swinging. Well, that didn't last long because it's too expensive. So I decided I'd move from there, and I made a move across town and got me an apartment in a retirement center. I'm 42 years old. I got me a place in a retirement center. Everybody there was 65, 70-year-old people. And, you know, we had a wonderful time. They drank a lot, and we drank together. And you know, we spent a lot of time doing our thing there. Well, my job with the state of North Carolina was about to end because it was a political job, and I knew I had to find me a place to go to work. Can't drink if you don't work. Can't afford it. So my life was almost in shambles. No peace, no rest, ever. Just drinking and fooling around. And I thought, you know, I'd like very much for my life to be back where it used to be, comfortable and at peace and no troubles going on like I used to have when I was a minister out in the country, you know. I thought if I could get me a couple little churches and just preach on Sunday and fish during the week, I'd have a good time. And I got me the brilliant idea that I'd call my bishop. Now, a bishop in the Methodist Church is a powerful individual, especially with his preachers. He tells you where to go and what to do and how to do it. And I called the office down in Charlotte and got me an appointment with the bishop because I was going to try to get me a couple little churches out in the country. And sure enough, his secretary got me an appointment. He's a black Mississippi bishop, black Mississippi man, good man, a great bishop, good godly man. And now I live in Greensboro and about 100 miles down to Charlotte. And I figured a fifth would probably do. Nobody going to go see a bishop without having to drink. So I had a fifth, and I drank half of it down there. And I'm about half shot when I get to his office. I walk in. I knew I'm in trouble when I opened the door. I saw he had my records on his desk, and they were about as thick as a big book. I knew I was in trouble. But I sat down, and I told him what I wanted. You know, I didn't ask him what he wanted to give me. I just said, this is what I'd like to have, Bishop. And he stopped me, and he said, Ray, aren't you divorced? I said, yes, sir, I am. And I was proud of that. You know, I was the only Methodist minister in our conference had a divorce. And he said, I've never appointed a minister divorced to any church. You don't intend to start. And I stopped him. I said, Bishop, I'm about to be married. Now, I wasn't even seeing anybody. And he said, well, who are you going to marry? And I said, I'm going to remarry Betty. Now, Betty wasn't even talking to me in those days. She's done told me, you call me anymore, I'm going to call the police on you. So I couldn't talk to her. And he said, Ray, if you can do that, I'll give you a church. Well, I've got a half a fifth to get back to Greensboro on. It wasn't that day. It might not have been the next day. But sometime during the next few days, I made a call now, and all I know is God was working in my life even then. I called Betty, and she talked to me. What a miracle. And I said, how about having dinner with me one night, big girl? And she said, that'd be fine. Well, here we are one night. I'm about half crocked. Lights were low, and the candles were lit. And I looked over at her big old blue eyes, and I said to her, sweetheart, will you remarry me? Now, if you were a pre-Al-Anon, let me tell you how damn sick you were. This lovely lady said to me, who had papers at home saying, I don't belong to her anymore. She said, I will. And she did. And we got married. Now, I got the superintendent to do it for me because I wanted the bishop to get the word. And the bishop got the word, and they gave us a couple little churches. 3 of them, in fact. He added an extra one for me. And it was not far from the lake, and I did a lot of fishing. I went there in June. Moved there in June, and I wasn't going to ever drink again. You know, Will Power and I went along together, and we went on down there to those three churches, and things went along real well that summer. I didn't drink. They liked me, and I liked them, and when I don't drink, I'm a pretty good preacher, and I visited a lot in the country, those people, and they really liked me. Now, this was on Labor Day of sometime the latter part of the 70s, and on Labor Day, and we went over to a neighbor friend of mine who's not a Methodist. He's a Presbyterian. I never drank with Methodists. He came over and said, "Ray, do you drink?" And I said, "Well, Richard, once in a while I've been known to take a drink." He said, "Well, we're going to have a party over at our house on tomorrow, Labor Day, Monday. Come on over." Well, we went over, and they carried me home. And the next 3 years in that little rural community was hell. I could never stand here and describe in words what happened in my life and in Betty's life. I buried people that I didn't even know died. I married couples that I had no idea they got married. I preached every Sunday, you know. I had to work in order to drink, to survive, and that was the only thing I knew to do. So I preached every Sunday, and I'm sure that I was intoxicated. At least I was drinking every Sunday. School teacher came up to me once when I said that one time talking and said, how in the world could you do that? And I said, "Did you ever go to school to teach your class drinking? Did you ever go to the secretary's office drinking? Did you ever go to the doctor's office where you work drinking?" Every one of us sitting here who are alcoholics drank on our job. And I just happened to be a preacher, you know, so as my job. And well, that didn't last long. You know, you don't do that long, because drinking became an obsession that took my life over. Betty was gone again, and I'm all by myself. Big old house, me and the cat. I made a call to the psychiatrist. I better turn this around. Maybe going too long. I made a call to the psychiatrist that I've been seeing 10 years, you know. I spent a lot of money with that doctor, and he never did help me, because I never did tell him what was wrong with me. You know? He never asked, and I never told him. But anyway, I made a call back to see Dr. MYRTLE in Greensboro, and I said, "Doc, I need some help. I'm in bad shape." He said, "Come on over to the hospital, and I'll put you in the hospital." Well, you know, I'd been there 3 other times. They hadn't helped me. But anyway, it's a psychiatric hospital, and so you don't go there unless you're drunk, you know. So I got pretty tight that night, and next day they carried me over there, and you know, they lock you up in those places. How many of you have been to psychiatric hospital? Wow, there's a crowd of you. Well, you know what I mean. I woke up the next morning, you come to, and I got out in the day room, and I looked around, and I thought, "Ooh, I'm in a bad place. I don't want to be classified with these people." And you know, in 3 days, we detoxed pretty fast, and I detoxed, and the doctor said, "Ray, you're doing so good. Our staff is working a good job with you. What we're going to do is give you a pass. We're going to let you go outside, and now don't get in any trouble." "No, sir." I said, "I'll go out and go to a movie." You know where I went? I went to the bar and drank all I could and bought a couple of fifths and put them in my coat and went on back into the hospital. I drank more there than I could have outside. And in December of that year, or January of that year, it snowed big in Greensboro. And people couldn't get in, couldn't get out, couldn't get any visitors in, couldn't get anybody out of the hospital. So I thought I was on staff there, you know. I was doing all my things with them, and they had an adolescent unit there. Had 14 little boys and girls down the hallway. I drifted down there a couple of times. They liked me. They thought I was cool, you know. I'm sure I was. I said to the nurses, if you'll give me some pans and buckets, I'll take these kids out and we'll get some snow and we'll make snow cream. They had no idea what I was talking about, but they thought it would be very therapeutic. So I got the 14 kids on the elevator and we went outside. Wasn't a soul out there. All the people were gone. And I lost them. I lost those kids. And it wasn't long that I heard them. They were over in a circle up against the building, and they were passing something around in a circle. And they gave it to me, and I took a little toke. First thing you know, all of us up on the 8th floor just flying. Now, I tell you that because it was a marking point in my life. The thought came to my mind, Ray, you're a fool. You're wasting people's time and money, energy and effort. You need to try to help yourself get straightened out. So I herded them back into the elevator, got them up on the floor, and they went to the room and went to bed. And I went down to the nurse's station, and I told her what I'd been doing, drinking too much in there and smoking some stuff with the kids. I need to see the doctor. Well, he couldn't get over there that night, but he came the next morning. I sat down in his office, and I told him, and he said, Ray, I'm the chief of staff here. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. And I blew my breath in his face, and he discharged me. And I went back home all by myself. And the miracle had already kicked in because I had a willingness to want some help. I wanted to be helped. I needed some help, and I wanted it. The miracle started, and my wife, Betty, called, who wasn't with me anymore. She still loved me, though, and we loved each other. She called a friend of mine who called a friend, down the line. It's amazing to keep passing it on down to somebody else. And the knock came on the door, and Bob came in. And Bob said, Ray, I've come to help you. And I'm sitting there in my house drunk all by myself. He said, I've come to help. And he sat down and began to tell me about what had happened to him. Now, I drank with this guy a long time, and I hadn't seen him in years. And he had gotten himself into the fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous. He was sober. He said, I'm going to take you to tomorrow. Today, I'm going to take you to a place to get some help. Well, once again, I ain't going nowhere without something to drink. And he said the magic words. He said, I've got some beer in the car. And I jumped in with him, and off we went. Next morning, I came to in a hospital. I had no idea where I was. And I thought, now, how am I going to find out where I am that people don't know that I don't know where I am, So I made a decision that as soon as anybody walked into that room, I was going to ask them in a way that they wouldn't know that I didn't know where I was. In a few minutes, a beautiful young girl, could have been more than 20 years old, came to the door, dressed in a beautiful white nurse's uniform, back in the days when there were little caps on their head. She was so pretty. And I'd been sick all night in that bed. I'd puked all over myself, and I was a mess. And she came to the bed, and I said to her, honey, where am I? And that little girl said to me, in words that still ring in my ears today, in my soul, she said, Reverend Moss, when you were my mom and daddy's preacher, you baptized me. I wanted to die. I wanted to die. Well, from there, I went to a treatment center. Stayed 42 days. Now, I was sicker than a lot of people. Most people get out 28, but they kept me 42. I never have figured it out, but when I left that place, they told me some things. I heard it the other night. Someone said they introduced them to Alcoholics Anonymous. They had introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous, And they gave me a big, no, they didn't give me a big book, Jack. They sold me one for $10,000. And I went back to Kannapolis. Well, I left there the next day to go back to see my superintendent to tell him that I'll take those churches back because I found some things to preach about. They call the 12 steps. And when I went to his office, he told me that he and the bishop had decided they didn't need me anymore. And they did it in a kind way. They put me on leave of absence. That's the kind way of saying we fire you. And it's hard to get a job when you're a preacher looking for a job, I can tell you that. That next night, or that night on March 24th, 1980, I walked into the doors of the Kannapolis group of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was driving my little old drunk car, a little 62 Rambler. I sat outside that room, that little building, and I thought, now, if I go in there and they ask me where I work, and I got to tell them I got fired today, I'll never come back. Or if they ask me, where's your wife? And I got to say, she left me, I ain't coming back. Well, they didn't ask me a thing. They gave me 16 names, 16 phone numbers. Not on a little bitty scrap piece of paper where you lose it, but on a sheet of paper, notebook paper. I still got it. And they said, call us, call us. And that started a journey. I wish I had time to tell you of all the things that have happened in my life from that moment to this one. The miracle, it's unreal. I've had the privilege of living with a woman for the last 31 years in sobriety, where our life has been a peaceful life. We've had our times of aggravations, and that's what I've called them. Life is only little aggravations, little stinging points, but the program has moved us through them. Our children love us. Our grandchildren love us. I've sat with my bishop, the man that was my bishop when I was running crazy, and I made my amends to him and told him everything. I did a 5th step, I guess, with him and told him everything that I did wrong, from adultery to stealing in the church. And when I got through, he said, Ray, I've never heard that kind of honesty in my life. I said, well, Bishop, that's just one step. We got 11 more. And the church has taken me back years ago in my sobriety. They gave me an opportunity across the whole southeastern region to go talk to families and ministers and clergy people who didn't know anything about alcoholism, to talk to them about the family disease. I've had that privilege. I've had the opportunity for 12 years to work in and run and be administrator of treatment centers across South Carolina and Florida, where I've had the opportunity. A fellow came up to me the other night, Brock did, and said, you remember me? Well, I've known a lot of people since I met him, but I met him in a treatment program. He wanted to thank me. Out of all the thousands of people that I've had an opportunity to know, here comes a man to say, thank you for being there in that treatment program when I was there. God gave me that opportunity to work in a treatment program and to operate them so that men like this young man, his family, could enjoy sobriety. I've had that privilege. Isn't that an honor? When I got here, there wasn't a soul behind me. But I can look back over my shoulders now at all the young men that I've had the privilege to sponsor and all the people that they've sponsored, and the line goes on and on. What a privilege God has given me to be able to work with the alcoholic and the family. On my first birthday, about 200 people there. I thought they all came to see me get a chip as he go in it. And let me tell you, the people that were there were the people that I'd hurt the most. My wife, my children, my mom and family. And old Bob, my 12-stepper, God, I'm so grateful Bob didn't say, when he sobers up, I'll come see him. He said, I'll be there. It came when I was drunk. Don't ever do that. You know, the drunk needs us. Get somebody to go with you. Clean him up if you can. Take him to detox. Sit with him. Do what's necessary. Don't say when he gets sober, tell him to call me. That's arrogancy. The Saturday night at that airport group in Concord, my son, who I devastated with my drinking, just devastated that boy, was there. He's a strapped-in submariner. When they gave him a chip and I said my words and everybody was standing around talking, I looked for him. I couldn't find that boy in that crowd. And he couldn't stand it. I had taught him that men don't hug and men don't cry, and he couldn't do either one of them without crying. So I went to the back door of that church and looked down across the parking lot, and there he was, way down in the corner. And I got down all those 3 little steps and walked toward him, and he walked toward me, and we embraced in that parking lot. And that young man said to me, "You're the best daddy in the whole world." You know what it took for me to get that? Go to meetings, don't drink, read, study the book, work steps, and work with other people. In 1 year's time, my son said to me, "You're the best daddy in the whole world." Old Joe got sober. My daddy, he called me. I was working down in South Carolina. I got a call from Joe, and he said, "Ray, I need your help. I'm sick." Well, I thought that I left and went up to see him. He lived above Charlotte. And Joe had been on one of those long, extended drunks. He'd been drunk 3 months. He was in bad shape. He said, "I need some help." And I said, "Well, I'll call the doctor and get him to come out here." He said, "Son, I need some help with my drinking." He had never said that to me before. Well, I jerked his little tail up and put it in my car, and off we went to the VA Hospital Treatment Center. He stayed 6 months. He was so sick. Joe got sober. I gave him every chip he picked up. The man I hated and prayed to God would die, I was able to give him the 6 years chips that he had. Where can that kind of stuff happen, folks? Anywhere except in Alcoholics Anonymous, in a 12-step program. Without a doubt, we are the most blessed people in the world. There's not a group of people I know anywhere I've ever been that finds the joy and peace and happiness that you and I have found. I heard your story. I heard the story, both of you. I listened carefully to it. Where would you find that except in this place? Nowhere. And where would you find people who would listen to it and believe it except here? Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. But the last words Betty said to me when I left when she pulled out that day to leave me in that little rural place was, I hope I never see you again, you SOB. And this morning she put her arms around me and said, "I love you." What a journey. Isn't that amazing? I've got a grandson who's a brilliant young man. He's 26 and he's makes a lot of money and works hard. Doesn't drink. He was staying with us when he was a little boy. We kept him some, and he was staying with us, and he went to a lot of meetings. He's been to the International in San Diego. And had a wonderful time. So if he ever needs us, he knows all about us. But He was a little fella, and he'd been to a lot of meetings. You know, little boys want to impress grandpas, I'm sure. But I'm getting ready to go to work one morning, and he was seeing me out the door, and I'm getting in the car. Just as I started to open the car door, he said, "Be easy, Papa." He almost had it, you know. And I've adopted that to my life. Be easy, be easy. I've tried to be easy. Now the disease that I have slows the body down. It also slows the mind down. And what used to be a 45-minute talk is an hour and a half now. So we're just about halfway through it. I have the rare privilege of in my hometown and up where I live, they call me Reverend Ray. Isn't that marvelous? See, I thought my ministry was over, and it just started. How could I have ever worked with people who needed me the most had I not been an alcoholic? Harry Barrett, many of you from South and North Carolina knew Harry. He was the first AA speaker I ever heard. They took me from treatment center to AA meeting one Friday night. I told them that morning when they come around and said, "You've been chosen to go. We're going to take you out to an AA meeting." I said, "I don't believe I'll go." And they said, "Well, if you can't stay here if you don't go." And so I went along with them. He was the first speaker I'd ever heard. Study, you know Harry. Harry said, as he introduced himself, "I'm a grateful alcoholic." And I thought, you're lying. But I can stand here and tell you today, I am so grateful that God allowed me to become an alcoholic, to have wallowed in my own puke, because I know how you feel. When I was in a treatment, waiting to be admitted to the treatment program in Charlotte, I probably was as sick as I'd ever been in my life. And I sat in that little lobby waiting for them to decide what they're going to do with me, whether they're going to take me or send me somewhere else. And while I sat there, a fella came up the hallway, worked there, had a suit on, nice tie. His hair was in place. I'm sitting on a couch, and he came over, got down beside me, and stooped, knelt down on one knee and said, "Ray, my name's Jamie, and I'm an alcoholic, and I know how you feel." And he got up and left. And when he walked across the lobby of that room, the program of attraction kicked in. That's what it's all about, the program of attraction. I said, I want to be like him. I want to be like him. And I want those people who are out there that come to this program, when they come new, I want that newcomer to look at me and say, they see in me what this program can be, and they want to be like me, because I know how they feel. You do too. A little boy was getting on the school bus to go to school for the first time. Mama dressed him up real nice. He had a brand new pair of shoes on. First grader. Had a new shirt, new little jacket. Hair was all in place. Those of you who walked your kids down to the bus for the first time know what I mean. Mama walked him down, she cried. He jumped on the bus and took off. Well, she was back there at 2 o'clock to wait on that bus, and when the bus stopped, the little fella jumped off. He was so enthusiastic about the day. He lost a shoe. His coat was torn. His hair was standing straight on his head, and he had 2 black eyes. And Mama looked at him and said, "Son, who gave you those black eyes? Who gave you those black eyes?" And the little boy squared his shoulders up, looked at her square in the face and said, "Mama, they don't give those things away. You got to fight for them." And when I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, they didn't give it away. They still don't. This program is not something they give you. It's something you got to work for. Sterling and I talked about the other day, you trudge that road to happy destiny. You don't just wander through the lilies. You trudge it. And you got to work hard at it. I've stayed sober because I wanted to stay sober. I've stayed sober because of the Alcoholics Anonymous offered me 12 steps. I've stayed sober because I've got a sponsor. I stayed sober because I sponsor people. And it's hard work to sponsor people and do it right. I chose a fellow in Kannapolis to be my sponsor when I first got out of treatment. I liked what he looked like. I didn't know he had 12 years sober. I thought he was like me. He was going to a lot of meetings. Everywhere I went, he was there. So I figured he was a newcomer. I asked George to be my sponsor, and he agreed. He never told me to do a thing. He always showed me. Always walked beside me. Never ahead of me, never behind me, always beside me. I stayed sober because George saved my life. If it hadn't been for him, I'd not be here today. I know that. He brought me to my first gratitude retreat. He did a lot of firsts with me and his wife and Betty and I. George died a few years ago, and he was in the hospice house, and I went to see him every day and stayed a long time every day. I knew it was the last time I'd get to see him alive, and I sat beside him for a long time that Friday. He called me from his bed to move a little closer to him. I pulled my chair up so he wouldn't have to speak too loud. And he motioned for me to come closer. Now listen to this. George said, "Ray, have you seen my new house?" I said, "George, are you think you're hallucinating?" I said, "Are you talking about the house on Rose Avenue?" He said, "No. Have you seen my new house?" And I said, "No, I hadn't seen it, George." He said, "I'm going to tell you this. It's the nicest one on the block." I'm convinced that man saw the vision of his new house. Then he called me a little bit closer, and he said, "It's on page 88. It works. It really does." 5 little words. It works. And that's the last George ever said to me. It works. It really does. Now, I'm telling you, if you're new here, and some of you are, you're not sure about this program. You see, we're crazy people in here. You know, you'll have to stay with us a while to be sure that you understand us. And you'll find soon that you're one of us. But if you're willing to work this program, you can stay sober. And you can be happy, joyous, and free, and enjoy the best life you've ever known in this world. And even get a glimpse, maybe, of your new home. Betty and I love you folks. Thank you, Sterling, for the invitation. Now, if you'll give Jerry time to get this old cripple boy down, we'll say the Lord's Prayer with you. Thank you very much. It's gonna be fun, Jerry.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.